There's a message sitting in your phone right now that you have read but never replied to, not because you don't know what to say, but because you have rewritten it in your head 20 times and it's still not perfect.
And somewhere, there's also a decision you've been avoiding for months, not because the answer is hard, but because your mind won't stop arguing with itself.
Here's the strange part. That decision you keep avoiding, it will probably cost you less than the time you've already spent worrying about it.
By the end of this episode, you will understand exactly why your mind does this to you and the 3 simple tools to finally break free from it.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to Speak English Simply. I'm Alex.
And I'm Maya. This is the podcast where we help you master English while talking about real things that matter, things about life, the mind, and how we grow.
Today's topic is one almost everyone struggles with, but almost nobody talks about honestly.
Let me ask you something strange. Have you ever made a mistake and forgotten about it in a week?
Yes, of course. That happens to everyone.
Now, think about this. Have you ever thought about doing something and then thought about it and thought about it and thought about it for months, maybe even years?
Yes, actually, yes. Too many times.
That is exactly what we are talking about today, because here's something most people never realize. Failure usually hurts for a short time, but overthinking can hurt for a lifetime.
Wait, that sounds backwards. Shouldn't failing be worse than just thinking?
That is what everyone assumes, but today we are going to prove why that assumption is wrong.
Let me tell you about a man named Daniel. Daniel had an idea for a small business, a simple coffee cart in a busy part of his city.
Okay, I like coffee already.
Continuing, he calculated the cost. He found a good location. Everything looked possible. But then his mind started asking questions. What if nobody buys it? What if the rent goes up? What if his friends laugh at him? What if he loses his savings?
That sounds familiar to a lot of people.
Daniel thought about this idea for 3 years. 3 years of imagining failure, imagining embarrassment, imagining the worst outcome. And in the end, he never started the business at all.
So he didn't fail, he just never tried.
Exactly. And 5 years later, someone else opened the coffee cart in that exact same location. It became successful. Daniel watched it happen from across the street.
That is painful to hear.
But here is the important part. If Daniel had tried and failed, he would have learned something. He would have new information, new experience, maybe even a better idea for next time. Instead, he has years of what if and no answer at all.
This is where the science becomes interesting. Researchers who study the brain have found something important. Failure activates a part of the brain related to learning. Your brain treats failure like information. It says, "This did not work. Let's adjust."
And overthinking?
Overthinking activates a completely different system, the threat system. Your brain treats imagined danger almost the same way it treats real danger. So when you imagine failing again and again in your mind, your body experiences stress as if it is actually happening over and over.
So thinking about failure repeatedly can feel as exhausting as failing repeatedly?
In some cases, even more exhausting, because real failure ends. You fail, you feel it, and eventually you move forward. But overthinking has no ending point. There is no final result, just an endless loop of maybe, what if, and but what about?
Let's talk about why our brains do this. Why do we overthink instead of just acting?
It comes from an old survival instinct. Thousands of years ago, thinking carefully before taking action could save your life. If a sound came from the bushes, the human who paused and thought carefully survived longer than the human who acted without thinking. So, overthinking was once useful. Very useful for physical danger. The problem is, modern life rarely has physical danger. Instead, we use that same ancient alarm system for emails, conversations, decisions, and choices that are not actually life-threatening. So, our brain is using an old tool for a completely new kind of problem. Exactly. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger might attack me and my boss might not like my idea. Both feel like danger. Let me give you another example. A woman named Priya wanted to ask for a raise at her job. She deserved it completely. She had proof, performance, results. Sounds like an easy conversation. It should have been, but she rehearsed the conversation in her head almost every single day. She imagined her boss saying no. She imagined being judged. She imagined an awkward silence in the room. That sounds exhausting just hearing about it. She avoided asking for 8 months. 8 months of mental rehearsal. 8 months of imagining the worst. When she finally asked, her boss said yes, almost immediately. 8 months of suffering for a yes that took 30 seconds. That is the real cost of overthinking. It's not just wasted time, it's wasted peace of mind. Priya suffered more from imagining the conversation than she would have suffered from an actual rejection. So now the real question, how do we break this pattern? Because simply saying, stop overthinking, never works. The brain doesn't respond well to that command. So what actually works? The first method is called the 5-minute rule. When you notice yourself overthinking a decision, give yourself 5 focused minutes to think it through completely. Write down the worst outcome, the best outcome, and the most likely outcome. Then you must decide.
That sounds simple but powerful.
The second method is called the 10-10-10 rule. Ask yourself, will this matter in 10 minutes, in 10 months, in 10 years? Most things we overthink fail all 3 questions. They simply don't matter as much as our mind makes them feel. That puts things into real perspective. The third, and maybe the most powerful method, is taking imperfect action. Overthinkers wait for the perfect plan before moving, but action creates clarity that thinking never can. You learn more from one small step than 100 imagined outcomes. This makes me think differently about failure itself. That is the real lesson here. Failure is temporary. It has a beginning and an end, but overthinking can become permanent if we let it. It can quietly take away opportunities, relationships, and years of our life without ever giving us the lesson that real failure would have given us. Daniel never got his coffee cart. Priya lost 8 months of peace of mind. And somewhere, right now, someone is overthinking a decision that could change their life. Maybe that someone is you watching this video. So here's a question for you. What is one decision you've been overthinking for too long? Write it in the comments below. Sometimes saying it out loud is the first step to finally moving forward. Failure teaches you something. Overthinking just makes you tired. Choose the lesson, not the loop. Like this video if it gave you something to think about, and subscribe for more episodes that help you grow in both English and in life. And remember, as always, keep it simple.